For 3,000 years, the hegemony had ruled the outer rim of the galaxy without challenge. Entire star systems went silent the moment their fleets arrived. Civilizations learned the lesson early: resistance meant extinction, surrender meant survival. Commander Stela stood at the center of his flagship, feeling the slow, familiar pulse of its living hull beneath his clawed feet. The ship breathed around him, a vast organic organism grown for one purpose alone: war. Light from distant stars bent across its bioluminescent skin as it fed on cosmic radiation, converting it into motion and power. To Stela, the sensation was comforting, like resting inside the chest of a colossal predator. Around his vessel, 11 sister ships glided through the void in flawless formation. Their hulls gleamed with wet, living sheen, membranes flexing as internal weapon organisms shifted and stretched in anticipation. The fleet moved like a single creature, each ship an extension of the others, bound by genetic command protocols perfected over millennia. No mechanical empire had ever matched their efficiency. No synthetic intelligence had ever outpaced their biocomputational networks. The hegemony did not build ships. They grew them. And grown things adapted, learned, evolved. Another empty sector. Sub-Commander Krelix muttered from the nerve cluster that served as navigation and sensory control. His 6 eyes flickered as data streamed directly into his nervous system. 3 full patrol cycles without contact. No resistance. No tribute fleets. Nothing. Stela's mandibles clicked in mild irritation. Boredom was a dangerous thing for warriors bred for conquest. Once, the Outer Rim had been a place of desperate last stands and violent first contacts. Now it was quiet. Too quiet. World after world had fallen until there was no one left who believed fighting the hegemony was worth the cost. Even the most defiant species learned eventually. Fear was efficient. Our reputation moves faster than we do, Stela replied. They surrender before we arrive. Krelix emitted a sound halfway between agreement and disappointment. I miss opposition. At least then there is purpose. Stela understood the feeling. He had earned his command during an era when enemy fleets still tried their luck, when biocruisers returned scarred and bloodied, when victories felt earned. Now, most campaigns ended without a single weapon discharge. The hegemony had become inevitable, and inevitability bred stagnation. Then the sensors changed. Krelix stiffened, eyes widening as unfamiliar signals rippled through the nerve cluster. Commander, he said slowly, boredom gone from his voice. I am detecting an anomaly. Grid designation 77 Alpha. Stela turned toward the viewing membrane. The living hull parted seamlessly, forming a transparent lens that focused across vast distances. Stars shifted as the flagship adjusted course, attention narrowing onto the coordinates. At first, there was nothing. Empty space. Cold, unremarkable vacuum. Then the sensors resolved the object. Stela felt a chill creep along his carapace. The thing hanging in space was massive, larger than any vessel the hegemony had ever grown. It did not flow or pulse. It did not glow with life. Its shape was wrong. Where hegemony ships curved and flexed, this object was rigid, angular, brutal. Hard lines intersected at sharp angles, forming a silhouette that looked less like a creature and more like a weapon given physical form. Layer upon layer of dull metal plates covered its surface, scarred and dark, as if designed to endure punishment rather than avoid it. What is that? Stela whispered. Krelix's voice carried uncertainty now. Artificial construction detected. No biological components. No living tissue signatures. The structure appears dead. Dead. The word echoed in Stela's mind. Dead things did not move with purpose. Dead things did not patrol the void. Yet the object was maneuvering, adjusting position with deliberate precision. It was not drifting. It was watching. Sensor data continued to stream in, each update more disturbing than the last. The vessel was composed entirely of refined alloys and synthetic materials, assembled with methods unknown to hegemony science. There was no central biocore, no neural mass, no genetic command lattice. Nothing alive at all. And yet it functioned. It was like discovering a corpse that could think. Stella stared at the silent giant, a sensation unfamiliar and unwelcome settling into his chest. For the first time in centuries, he did not feel dominant. He felt uncertain. 3,000 kilometers away, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human warship and regarded the new contacts with practiced calm. The tactical display floated before him in crisp blue lines, 12 unknown vessels outlined by sensor returns that flickered with unfamiliar energy signatures. The ship beneath his boots vibrated softly as fusion reactors maintained steady output, the sound a constant reminder of contained power. This was not his first dangerous patrol, nor even his first encounter with the unknown, but it was the first time the unknown had stared back from beyond humanity's charts. 12 contacts confirmed, Lieutenant Amy Foster reported, fingers moving with disciplined speed across her console. Unknown configuration. Organic composition. Not matching any recorded alien architecture in our databases. Morrison nodded once, absorbing the information without comment. At 52, he had spent most of his life in vacuum and steel, commanding vessels designed for the worst days imaginable. Panic had no place on his bridge. Distance? Closing. 4,000 kilometers and decreasing, Foster replied. Their approach vector suggests deliberate contact. That earned a low hum of interest from the bridge crew. Morrison leaned slightly forward, studying the alien ships as they resolved into sharper detail. They moved with fluid grace, surfaces rippling like living skin beneath faint glows of bioluminescence. Beautiful, in a way. Dangerous, too. He had learned long ago that elegance did not imply mercy. Any sign of weapon activity? He asked. Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her station. I'm detecting energy fluctuations across multiple frequencies. Patterns don't match propulsion. Likely weapon systems charging. Morrison exhaled slowly through his nose. Understood. Tactical assessment. Foster's voice remained even. Each vessel approximately 400 meters in length. Energy output suggests bioorganic reactors. Weapon profiles appear energy-based, plasma or particle emission. No evidence of kinetic systems. No missile bays detected. No kinetics at all, Morrison repeated, eyebrows lifting slightly. None, sir. That was interesting. Any species that survived long enough to build warships usually rediscovered the value of throwing mass at high speed. Energy weapons had their uses, but physics never stopped being honest. Morrison made a mental note. Engineering, he said. Status. Chief Pete Collins responded immediately from deep within the ship. All systems nominal, Captain. Armor layers fully charged. Point defense grid online. Reactors at combat readiness. She's solid. Morrison allowed himself a brief, private smile. The ship was more than solid. It was a fortress wrapped in engines, built from lessons paid for in blood across humanity's expansion. Every system existed because something had once gone wrong elsewhere. The alien vessels continued their approach, closing the distance with synchronized precision. Morrison watched them reposition, spreading slightly as if to encircle. It was a familiar tactic. He had seen pirates, insurgents, and even human fleets attempt variations of the same maneuver. They're slowing, Foster noted. Possible communication attempt. Or optimal weapons range. Either way, Morrison said. We don't flinch. He straightened. Lisa, prepared to open a channel if they transmit. Tactical, keep weapons hot but don't assign targets yet. The order rippled through the bridge without hesitation. The ship did not accelerate. It did not retreat. It simply held course, a slab of metal and intent drifting with quiet confidence through hostile space. To the alien sensors, the human vessel must have appeared oddly still, almost indifferent. Internally, thousands of systems were awake. Quantum processors chewed through probability trees. Artificial intelligences refined threat models. Targeting algorithms tested and discarded firing solutions faster than biological thought could form. Morrison studied the graceful alien formation and identified the flaw immediately. They were positioning as if their enemy would remain passive, as if intimidation alone would dictate the engagement. "Helm," he said calmly. "Bring us about. Present broadside." "Aye, sir." The massive ship began to rotate, not with elegance, but with deliberate certainty. Thrusters fired in precise bursts, reorienting thousands of tons of armored hull. As it turned, concealed structures shifted beneath armored plates. Power rerouted. Systems synchronized. On alien sensors, something changed. The human warship was no longer merely approaching. It was choosing how to be seen. As the human vessel completed its rotation, the illusion shattered. What the hegemony fleet had first taken for a silent, inert mass revealed its true nature in a slow, merciless unveiling. The ship's full profile filled alien sensor arrays, and for the first time in thousands of years, a hegemony battle group hesitated without command. The size alone was staggering. The human warship dwarfed the flagship at the center of Stella's formation, its armored bulk extending outward like a floating citadel. This was not a craft built for swift strikes or ceremonial intimidation. It was built to endure. Layered armor plates overlapped in brutal geometry, scarred by micrometeor impacts and old battle damage that had never been polished away. Every mark told a story of survival. Then the weapons emerged. Hidden ports slid open across the hull with mechanical precision. Massive railgun turrets rotated smoothly into position, each one larger than entire hegemony weapon organisms. Missile bays irised open in clustered rows, their internal racks bristling with compact, lethal payloads. Point defense arrays unfolded by the hundreds, tracking independently, adjusting angles with eerie coordination. The ship did not merely carry weapons. It was weapons, integrated into every surface. A ripple of confusion spread through the alien fleet as targeting warnings bloomed across their tactical displays. "Commander," Krelix whispered, his 6 eyes locked on cascading data. "Their systems are active." Before Stella could respond, the warnings multiplied. Lines of light appeared in the tactical overlays, stretching from the human ship to each biocruiser in the formation. Not one or two. All of them. 12 distinct targeting solutions locked in place within seconds, each line stable, unwavering. Impossible. Hegemony biocomputers were living marvels, capable of adaptive thought and predictive modeling, but they required time. Even under ideal conditions, acquiring precise firing solutions against maneuvering targets took minutes of biological computation. The human ship had completed the process almost instantly. The realization struck like a physical blow. The machine was thinking faster than they could. Stella stared as the targeting data refined itself further, adjusting in real time as his fleet instinctively shifted position. Every micro-correction the hegemony ships made was anticipated, countered, folded into new calculations before the movement was complete. Evasion paths glowed on the displays, then vanished as they were preemptively denied. "They see everything," one sub-commander transmitted in disbelief. "Our hull density, our internal structures, they are aiming for vital cores." The precision was horrifying. Railgun trajectories aligned with the exact center of mass of each biocruiser. Missile vectors bracketed potential escape routes. Energy weapons calibrated angles designed to exploit weaknesses the hegemony themselves barely understood. This was not approximate targeting. This was execution-level accuracy. For the first time since his ascension to command, Stella felt fear bloom uncontrollably through his neural lattice. Not panic, but a cold, suffocating certainty. If the human ship fired, the battle would not unfold. It would end. "They have target lock on every vessel," Krelix said, his voice trembling. "Simultaneously." Across the void, aboard the human warship, the bridge remained quiet. No cheers. No raised voices. Lieutenant Foster's fingers paused above her controls as confirmation lights turned steady green. "All targets acquired," she reported. "Solutions locked and updating continuously." Captain Morrison inclined his head slightly. "Hold." That single word echoed louder than any threat. The human ship did not fire. It did not advance. It waited. The hegemony formation froze, graceful motion arrested mid-pattern. Instinct screamed for action, but every option led to annihilation. Advance meant crossing perfectly mapped kill zones. Retreat meant exposing vulnerable vectors already predicted. Even firing first offered no comfort. The machine would respond faster than organic thought could register. Stella understood then, with devastating clarity, that this encounter had already been decided. The humans had not outnumbered them. They had not outflanked them. They had outthought them. And in the cold silence between stars, the hegemony fleet remained motionless, trapped in the crosshairs of a warship that did not need to prove its dominance, because it had already done so. Pride overrode caution. It always had. Commander Stella forced his racing thoughts into rigid order and straightened his posture within the living command chamber. The hegemony did not freeze. It conquered. Whatever this mechanical aberration was, it would bleed like all others once tested properly. Begin offensive deployment, Stella commanded, his voice carrying enforced authority across the neural network. Release spore clouds. Prepare acid launchers. Full saturation. The fleet responded at once. Living hulls pulsed as weapon organisms awakened, membranes flexing and splitting open. Vast chambers within each biocruiser expelled clouds of microscopic spores, billions of engineered lifeforms erupting into space in luminous waves. They drifted forward like glowing mist, beautiful and lethal, each organism designed to devour matter, energy, and structure alike. Entire civilizations had vanished inside those clouds, their ships eaten from the outside and until nothing remained but drifting skeletons. Within the hegemony, confidence surged. No known material resisted the spores for long. Metal corroded. Energy fields collapsed. Even automated defenses failed once infected. The spores did not merely attack, they adapted. Across the void, human sensors detected the expanding cloud instantly. Chief Collins' voice cut in, calm and analytical. Captain, we're registering incoming biological particulates. High density. Unknown corrosive properties. Morrison studied the display for half a second. Understood. Activate point defense. The response was immediate. Panels across the human ship's hull slid aside, revealing hundreds of compact laser emitters. They were not impressive weapons by hegemony standards, small, precise, utilitarian. As the spore cloud advanced, the point defense grid came alive. Light flickered. Thousands of microscopic laser pulses stitched through space in patterns too fast for organic perception. Each pulse was tuned to a specific frequency, calculated in real time as sensor data streamed in. The lasers did not sweep blindly. They struck with surgical intent, targeting clusters of spores, adjusting output and wavelength between shots. The effect was devastating. Spores disintegrated on contact, their biological processes collapsing under energy precisely matched to destabilize their molecular bonds. Where clouds should have thickened, gaps formed instead. Where advance was expected, dissolution followed. Within seconds, millions of organisms were reduced to inert debris. Hegemony sensors struggled to interpret what they were seeing. They are erasing them, Krelix whispered. Individually. The spores attempted to adapt, altering structure, modifying consumption patterns. The human systems adapted faster. New frequencies replaced old ones instantly. The defense grid learned, recalculated, and refined its approach faster than biological evolution could respond. 30 seconds after launch, the cloud was gone. Nothing remained but faint traces of carbon residue drifting harmlessly through space. Silence gripped the hegemony fleet. Stella stared at the tactical display, disbelief locking his neural processes. The spores were not merely weapons. They were the hegemony's ultimate answer to unknown threats, the culmination of centuries of biological warfare. They had never failed. Until now. They neutralized everything. A sub-commander transmitted, panic seeping into his signal. No penetration. No residual contamination. On the human bridge, Chief Collins sounded almost bored. Threat eliminated, Captain. Point defense performed within expected parameters. Morrison nodded slightly. Any structural impact? None. Didn't even scratch the outer armor. The words carried across open monitoring channels, translated automatically into hegemony language. Each syllable struck harder than a kinetic blow. The humans had not treated the attack as a crisis. It had been maintenance. Morrison leaned back in his command chair, eyes returning to the alien fleet hanging motionless ahead. He tilted his head, curiosity flickering across his features. Was that supposed to be an attack? The question echoed through alien command nodes like a psychic shockwave. Stella felt something fracture deep within his genetic certainty. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had dictated the terms of fear. Now their most feared weapon had been dismissed as inadequate by a species that did not even bother to escalate. These humans did not rely on intimidation rituals or evolutionary terror. They relied on physics, computation, and preparation refined to an art. Their defenses were not reactive. They were anticipatory. The hegemony fleet remained frozen, not by targeting systems now, but by understanding. They were no longer facing a rival empire. They were facing a predator that had already calculated the outcome, and found it trivial. The silence stretched, heavy and absolute. 12 hegemony warships drifted in rigid formation, their living hulls dimmed, weapon organisms withdrawn in confused dormancy. Commander Stella felt the weight of command like a failing organ. Every doctrine he had ever studied assumed dominance, escalation, inevitable victory. None accounted for an enemy that treated annihilation as a matter of convenience. The human ship broke the silence first. A communication signal flooded hegemony channels, clean and unadorned. No intimidation patterns. No ritualized posturing. Just information. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Colonial Navy," the translated voice said evenly. "You are operating within human-controlled space. State your intentions." The simplicity of the words struck harder than threats. The hegemony had never been asked to explain itself. Its presence had always been justification enough. Stella activated his own transmitter, straightening instinctively. "I am Commander Stella of the hegemony," he replied, forcing authority into his tone. "This sector falls under our dominion. You will withdraw or be destroyed." On the human vessel, no alarms sounded. No weapons charged further. Morrison's reply came almost immediately. "If we decline?" The question exposed the emptiness beneath hegemony certainty. Stella answered automatically. "Then you will be eliminated." "Understood," Morrison said, calm as static. "Stand by." The channel closed. Stella barely had time to process the dismissal before energy readings spiked on his sensors. Not from weapons. From the human ship itself. Internal power rerouting surged through its structure, concentrating toward a single point along its spinal axis. Krelix's voice shook. "Commander, they are charging something." The human vessel did not move closer. It did not reposition. It simply prepared. Space itself seemed to tense. Within the human ship, magnetic fields rose to impossible intensities. Systems aligned. Mass drivers synchronized. The energy draw surpassed anything the hegemony had ever measured from a single platform. "Target acquired," a human voice transmitted casually, as if noting a routine adjustment. Far off the starboard flank of the engagement zone, a large asteroid tumbled slowly through space, unremarkable and ancient. "Fire!" The discharge was not loud. There was no explosion, no roar. A single tungsten projectile accelerated beyond comprehension, driven by electromagnetic force alone. It crossed the distance in a blink. The asteroid ceased to exist. Not shattered. Not cracked. Erased. The mass converted into a rapidly expanding cloud of incandescent plasma, glowing brighter than nearby stars before dispersing into nothing. Hegemony sensors failed, rebooted, failed again. The implications arrived slower than terror. That projectile had not carried exotic energy. It had not relied on living ammunition or adaptive biology. It was raw momentum applied with precision. Reliable. Repeatable. Scalable. Kinetic impact, Morrison explained, reopening the channel as if continuing an unfinished thought. We find it effective. Stella felt the last remnants of defiance collapse. That weapon could have been aimed at any of his ships. There would have been no counter. No adaptation. No survival. We will withdraw. Stella transmitted, the words tasting like ash. Your message will be delivered. I thought it might be, Morrison replied. You have 72 hours to clear this sector. Any hegemony presence after that will be considered hostile. The ultimatum was not shouted. It did not need to be. As the hegemony fleet turned away, their once proud formations broken by instinctive caution, Morrison's voice reached them one final time. For clarity, he said, almost conversational. This vessel is assigned to border patrol. We deploy larger assets when necessary. The channel closed. Stella stared into the void as hyperspace coordinates initialized. Border patrol. The phrase echoed with horrifying implications. If this was routine enforcement, then the true weight of human military power remained unseen. The hegemony ships vanished into faster-than-light transit, carrying with them the most dangerous knowledge their empire had ever acquired. Behind them, the human warship resumed its course. Weapons powered down. Systems returned to baseline. Crew members logged data, flagged reports, and prepared routine transmissions. For humanity, nothing extraordinary had occurred. For the galaxy, everything had changed.